Welcome to Dave and Dharm Demystify, a FinTech Futures podcast, helping make sense of the world of FinTech and digital finance. Please sit back and listen as the two Ds take a subject and discuss it to make it clearer and easier to understand.
Demystify.
Today, we are welcoming Jim Rowan to the show. Welcome, Jim. Jim joins us from the US, where he is head of AI for the US for Deloitte. So, Jim, would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. So head of AI is a pretty exciting role to have right now in the moment in the marketplace. And I've kind of got three responsibilities. One's really working with our clients, talking to technology companies, understanding what's happening in the marketplace around AI, which I feel like it's changing every few hours. So hopefully we'll timestamp the podcast in case anything I say is outdated in a few minutes. And then the other piece I get to do is spend a bunch of time on our internal transformation. So if you think about Deloitte as a big knowledge worker, capital software engineering focused business, there's a ton of disruption coming from AI. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about how do we help change that and modernize our business as well to meet the demands of AI and what our clients are looking for. And then the third piece is around innovation, because AI can be so disruptive. So how can we disrupt ourselves in the space of what's going on? So it's a great portfolio of things to get to work on. I have an amazing team that supports us on the journey, but that's a little about what I'm working on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first question would be, how do you stay on top of it? I mean, it is like absolutely everything seems to kind of change every few weeks. So
yeah, I mean, one of the things when I'm talking to our clients too is say that if someone's coming to you and telling you they have all the answers on AI, they're probably not telling you the truth. I mean, there are a few people in the world that probably do that, but most of us are all trying to keep pace with the change that's happening out there. And so for me, it's staying really close with our clients and conversations so that I stay grounded in the enterprise of what they really need, because I think there's so much marketing hype around the things that AI can do. And the rubber meets the road at real clients that are implementing real solutions that are struggling with the everyday challenges in AI. So that helps a ton, I think. The second is just really good conversations with the technology ecosystem. And that for a while has been like the independent software vendors, the big companies. But, I was just on the phone yesterday with a VC firm. So we spend a lot of time talking to venture capitalists, a lot of time talking to global AI leaders, because there's pockets of innovation happening globally everywhere. And so it's just sort of keeping that free flow of information going. And I've got a few favorite newsletters and things like that to stay on top of it. And of course, AI tools, are always very helpful for synthesizing all the information that's out there and kind of, making it digestible.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Actually, now, if you want to kind of know anything, going to ChatGPT and then checking it across all the other tools is not a place to start.
Yeah, it's great too. Like one of the things I found is that the AI tools have made academic research papers that you want to read more accessible to read quickly and kind of digest what the key stories are. But then you get like the flip side of that too. I don't know if you guys saw the most recent story that was out there around sort of ChatGPT causing like brain rot, in terms of your ability to like learn and write an essay. But then you dig into the story and it's a little bit different than what the paper was. And so I think that what's neat about the AI tools is it's giving a lot of accessibility to the information, but you still got to go into the details to really know what's actually going on in the story.
I agree 100%. I mean, it's something I have puzzled over. Like, I've got teenage children and you can see them using the tools, but actually, I think they're often using them quite wisely to actually delve very broadly across lots of research, pull it together, and then kind of go into the depth themselves. So,
yeah, it's such a fun, like, portal to curiosity. And you can really go deep, as you think about what you want to do. And like, how empowering is that for kids to think about the questions they could answer? I did grow up with the internet, but I mean, there were also still encyclopedias in my house, but that was pretty limited in terms of what you could get access to in the encyclopedia.
Well, and it's true. We sort of outsource knowledge finding to Google, but we're all better off because of it, I think. Because actually, as you say, if you've got encyclopedias everywhere, it's still very difficult to kind of find the insights. I think these models, I agree with you 100%. Today, we're really interested in Agentic, because I think that is, you read all the headlines, the next big kind of wave. And I wondered if you could just start by talking about what Agentic is in your view, and really like how we've got to the point where this is a sort of exciting new frontier.
Yeah, when I think about agents, and I think why we get so excited about them, maybe sort of to do the definition and why there's so much going on, pieces of software that are planning, reasoning, taking action, and eventually can develop some learning capability. And I think if you sort of think about agents in that level of context, that's really exciting because we've had highly deterministic rules-based software for a while that drives value, output, efficiency. But now we're thinking that we can apply more ambiguous activities with these agents. And so this next level of efficiency where you don't have all the answers, but you have a degree to reason and sort of think through the ambiguous parts of those tasks and then improve them, I think creates a lot of excitement. I think what we've been balancing though, and what we saw in the market was that you had this huge hype around generative AI. You couldn't walk into a client conversation without it being top of mind. I've seen the words change. So now in the past 6 to 9 months, it's been talk to me about Agentic or talk to me about AI broadly, which is great because we were focusing on such a small discipline of the AI space that the conversation would start with generative AI, but it never really would end with generative AI. It would be part of a broader ecosystem of things that we can do to solve for automation and efficiency. And now with Agentic, you've got so many different software companies out there talking about agentic AI, agents, massive amounts of efficiency you can achieve. We're really trying to help clients sort of demystify what that looks like and be excited about the possibilities, but also grounded in the reality of the things that need to occur to make that successful. And we're living that journey at Deloitte, trying to figure out our enabling areas, functions, and processes and how we improve them on a day-to-day basis too, much like every other client that we have.
Where are we at in terms of the development of it? So I read a lot of this stuff and I'm going, it all sounds a bit like BS to me. So I kind of get the principle, but it's like Gen AI. Like I've been in and I've talked to clients and you realize that the complexities of actually rolling out Gen AI into an enterprise are multifold. And I would assume with Agentic, you've got another layer of complexity. So where do you think it is in terms of the sort of curve of BS to actual implement? Or vaporware? You should probably say vaporware to actual implement.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's research out there that sort of points to kind of broad-based agentic AI adoption in the next 5 years or so. So if you sort of put that kind of view on the lens here, we're still very early stages. And actually in a client conversation earlier this week, one of my partners shared it and said, yeah, we're in the third inning. And I said, well, how long's the game? And then we kind of all sort of laughed because it was like, well, yeah, we're not quite sure if this is an American baseball 9-inning game. Are there extra innings? What does this look like?
Or cricket, I should just
Or
say.
cricket, which I don't know how many days you go for a test match, but like this is, a 5-day journey here. And so for us as the enterprise, I think we have to think about it like, what are the bite-sized chunks we can really accomplish with agentic AI? And what we're doing internally, I think, is a really great approach that we're trying to have our clients think about too. AI can drive immediate value through automation in the enterprise. And so one of the things like we did was we built a common platform that we use for engaging with our AI tools and capabilities. And then through that common platform, we're releasing new skills on the platform every couple of weeks so that we're adding new feature and functionality to drive value for our team internally about how we work. Now, that's easier to do once you have that platform built. So as you mentioned, like organizations that haven't started on their AI journey, it's going to be harder to get to this agentic journey because you need to have a strategy defined first and you know what your corporate objectives are. You need to have some degree of sense of what your technology platforms are you want to build on. And a bit of the sort of data cataloging lineage platform kind of established underneath so that you can figure out what am I okay serving from a data perspective into my models to actually drive some activity within the enterprise. So there's a lot of foundational work, but what we've also seen that's really exciting is the software development time is just really condensed. I mean, I used to write code. I've gotten back into sort of the experience of writing code again because it's like, wow, this is really fun now. Like I didn't have to memorize the syntax and I get immediate results in an application of whether or not it compiles. And so we're seeing the software development, like the front end side, really condense. And so we can release stuff quickly. And we're putting a bunch of effort in the QA process to make sure what we get is good enough. And we're making sure also as we release these things, we're focusing in on like internal users first for a lot of our core capabilities because we have room to be 80% accurate. We have room to have a buffer there versus a lot of times when we see kind of customer engagement, there's a little bit more hesitancy to have AI right in the middle of that because of the risk associated with the bad customer experience. So we're trying to kind of really focus on making progress quickly. And then the power of Agentic is sort of like what we're being promised on that longer term journey is totally reimagined processes with the use of AI. And that's going to take a while because both you have to understand the current state well to know what you're going to be changing to really break it. And not all of our processes are well documented and well understood. And so that's why you see organizations going after the software development cycle, contact centers, because those are places where you have really well-defined processes. You know how to measure outcomes and outputs. You have a baseline of performance to compare it to when you put a new AI system in. But that's going to be different when you get into like talent processes like performance management, acquisition, onboarding, things like that are a little bit more less measured in some organizations. And so it's going to take a little bit longer to reimagine them. Or even more like decision support things like management reporting. You want to drive more efficiency, you want to drive better insights, but those are typically harder things to measure in the enterprise and are going to take a little bit longer to do that process reimagination work around it. So we're seeing like a breadth of clients across the board on all these different areas and different pacing.
It sounds like, though, because we talked a little bit about automation, efficiency, and even reimagining seems like the same thing done better almost. But do you see a space for AI actually to fundamentally change banking, like slightly different business models or very different business models coming out of it? Is there a reimagining of the bank itself?
I think that should be part of everyone's core objective in their business today is to say, in your strategy team, take some percentage of your effort and do the entirely what would be the AI grounds up version of our business today, and what would that look like? And that's what the reimagination sort of vision has to be out on the edge. Now, we can use that then to kind of challenge your core business processes, but I think you need to push that challenge out there. So what does it mean to have an entirely AI-enabled financial representative that you engage with and get your financial planning from? That is entirely I don't know, what would that do? Would you trust it? Do you feel more confident actually sharing some personal details with the AI than another human? You know, that we've seen that a little bit in avatars. Like you might disclose a little bit more to an AI bot than you would to a human because you may be a little embarrassed about a situation or something that happened. So we see that in medical and healthcare too. So I think like having some effort in every enterprise geared towards the AI version of our business, like the best AI version of ourselves, is kind of an interesting way to start the reimagination process. But I think there's not a lot of patience in the enterprise right now to spend like an inordinate amount of effort to do that. And so that's where it all kind of comes back to some of these immediate efficiency gains, because people are on the hook from the board to say, I need results in 6 months. I need results in 3 months. I'm seeing press releases and PR from investor relations coming out that my competitors are doing X, Y, and Z out there. I need to show that too. So I think there's a balance of that. And right now the balance is on the efficiency, automation, improvement because of the immediate wins that people need.
But I think, like we said at the beginning, I guess the pace of innovation at the moment coming out of the tech providers, if we think at the end of 2022, ChatGPT came out, and then about a year later, we're not just talking about text anymore, we're talking about images and then music and video. And now we're talking about Agentic. And literally that time span is 3 years. So the usual planning horizons of like the next year, the 2-year and the 5-year plan, those have to be condensed because the output or the revolution in the technology is much faster than, like, even on the chip basis, we're going beyond Moore's law, right? Especially on things like the NPUs and, you know, from NVIDIA and even quantum seems to be like accelerating at pace faster. So
yeah, it seems like quantum's right around the corner now, and it used to be so far off.
Q days next year now. So
yeah, Q days next year and AGI is next week. But seriously, though, we know that the pace of innovation is increasing. We see the output of it. Can we still stick to a 5-year planning horizon for the visionary stuff? We surely got to be moving faster, right?
Yeah, I don't think that kind of planning horizon is interesting, and we like to do that. But we're really focusing on sort of 6-month versions of scenarios. And then what are the no regret bets in different scenarios to keep your optionality there? And I think what's fascinating is what kind of pressure does that put on your like corporate capital investment mindset? Like if you're going to go implement an SAP solution in your large multinational corporation, that's a many year, 100+ million journey. And you're trying to make that decision today. And you want commitment from your software providers that over those 2 years or whatever it takes to implement it, it'll be faster with AI and things of that nature, that you're going to get a better AI-enabled process capability about stuff we haven't even invented yet. And that's, I think, putting a ton of pressure in the corporate world just to sort of say, like, really what, how do I think through that journey? And it's why the relationships with those tech providers are so important to kind of really understand their version of the roadmap and how it really directly applies to what you're doing and their commitment, your global system integrator commitment to really driving everyday efficiencies in those types of programs. Because otherwise, it's hard to make that big investment today, knowing that so much is going to change tomorrow.
I think it's really, I mean, if you think about like what we've just been talking about, it requires businesses to have a complete mindset change. And I guess this is the power of AI, is you, like Dharmesh says, you can't apply the same rules. I mean, you're saying it. It's interesting your point around the development life cycles getting faster and faster, and with codecs and all these other things out there, it's going to get even faster, isn't it? Because soon the agents will be able to code themselves and they'll be able to kind of go through that development life cycle. So as a board, you'd be sort of sitting there going, well, we can barely like work out how to implement things like digital transformation, that. And now you've got these people coming in and saying, well, scrap this all, because the way your business works, the way you work with your employees, your custom, everything is going to change so radically. So, I mean, from a Deloitte's point of view, I mean, that must be an interesting challenge, but also quite scary as well, because you're kind of dealing with some proper psychology, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're at the heart of being disintermediated to a part of this whole conversation as well, right? You've got independent software vendors pushing into sort of the services. You talk a little bit about services as software is a big theme we're hearing in the marketplace. We're inventing our own products and taking them live in the marketplace around agents that we've built and can sell as software. So we're coming into the foray as well. And so that's creating a ton of tension in the marketplace in terms of figuring out, like, where does everyone play in this sort of white space? And you brought up the board conversation. You just go back there for a second. When we've talked about boards needing to have really strong tech representation on the boards for a while, but this is why it matters, is because if you don't have the right kind of board members that have some degree of technical depth and knowledge, have been part of agile teams and seen some of these things work, like, it's going to be hard to get the enterprise's mindset around that. And I think this is a great moment to drive some of that cultural change around agility. We're seeing that in terms of how we think about AI too. And really, we've been on an AI journey for a while. 7 years ago, we started to stand up our AI Academy, our AI Institute capabilities pre-ChatGPT moment, so that there was always that kind of foundation out there. But when those things hit, like, we went on through a massive scaling exercise to say, everyone needs to be familiar with AI. Here's how we drive fluency. AI tools for everyone. Here's the tools that we can drive out to the practice so they can use it efficiently. And that's really driving adoption. And we're seeing, because this is sort of like a consumer-led AI revolution too, that the tools you're using at home, if they're not as good at work, there's a lot of tension there too. So that's driving a lot of like adoption into the enterprise. And so employees want it, which is great. It is creating tension on the efficiency side because organizations are saying, well, can I do more with less? Or can I do more with the same amount of folks I have and maybe hold hiring constant while I grow revenue, improve margins? And so that's creating plenty of tension in the enterprise too. And we're seeing organizations that are both embracing the fluency, embracing the skilling aspect of this, and making it fun for employees to like use these tools, I think is really important. And then the final thing I'll leave with on some of the challenges is that the enterprise leaders have to adopt the tools and they have to lead from the front with this. So our leaders are very AI fluent. They're having the conversations with the tech leaders in the market, and then they're demonstrating back to our teams where they're using AI too. Because if I talk about AI every day and then don't use it, real lack of credibility. But the rest of the firm needs to be on that journey too. So hopefully that helps, because there's a lot of tension there when trying to navigate both fluency and tension around efficiency, headcount, how we manage all of that.
Is there any case studies or examples that you can give us of people that you think that have been an early adopter of agentic kind of AI and really done something quite special?
Yeah, we've got a public qual that we can kind of talk a little bit about. So there's a company, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, is embracing our Zora AI solution. So this is a product-based solution that we've developed in conjunction with them, where they're using agentic AI around their management reporting function. So that's, I think, a really good example of someone that's out there in the market. I have plenty of other examples of kind of large life sciences companies, large banking and capital market clients that I can't name directly that are very much along the agent journey. And the common theme that we're seeing of the early adoptions of the use cases is they're going after highly deterministic workflows that we know agents can be really effective at driving. And so you want to drive success in that process because you know, hey, we've got this set of workflows. This is really working well, and we can check the output from it. And what they're using as a foundation to build these multi-agent systems that we talk about. And a lot of organizations are going to be struggling with this over the next couple of years is how do I integrate agents from one software vendor, custom built agents, and agents from another software vendor into this multi-agent orchestration layer that tries to connect all this together, because the real value isn't going to be the small, discrete, deterministic workflows. It's going to be the enterprise workflows that connect these things together. And that's why you see these horizons of 5 years or longer, is because those things are going to be harder to stitch together. And that all goes along with, like I sort of add this to you, talk about scenarios. That all goes along with the scenario that we don't have a major trust event with AI at some point. Like there's a chance that we are all like happily moving along with AI and using it wonderfully. And then there is a cyber event, there's something else that happens that starts to really cause trust in AI that could slow down some of these adoptions.
That's a really, again, sort of an existential threat in terms of, I mean, I think that's good to kind of understand that might be up. And, you know, I guess that has to be dealt with when that kind of occurs, if it does occur. So it's a really interesting point.
I bring it up just because it's so like we talk about trust in sort of this vague concept of hallucinations and we should have guardrails and yes, like all the things, and we need to build trust in those capabilities. But at the end of the day, we are talking about a human and machine trust equation that we need to solve for. And we're still very much in those early days of that. If you look at autonomous vehicles as a very simple example, we're releasing some of those in a few cities in the US. That's a very limited amount of trust that we have in that type of system. And then if we fast forward for agents, we're talking about autonomous software agents running the enterprise. So we've got a long way to go from a trust perspective, I think. And that's one of the challenges from a broader speed of adoption.
So, I mean, in terms of sort of future, I mean, it's going to have a big impact on the way companies work and their customer relationships. I mean, what are some of the things that you're thinking about in terms of reshaping businesses around this?
I mean, just starting at the employee level, we're thinking of kind of like the 10X consultant, you know, the 10X software engineer that's got all these amazing coding tools, capabilities that help with the software development lifecycle, making them that much more efficient. So we really view these tools as sort of like a human plus machine integrated solution that just drives efficiency of how work gets done at our clients. And I think if you have that sort of maximalist mindset around 10Xing your workforce, I think that's a great way to kind of approach the use of the AI tools. And I think it brings your workforce along with you on the journey. Now, there's certainly organizations that are saying, okay, I get it, but you know what? Like, I don't need to 10X this area of my business. This is a major, I want to just reduce the cost of how this is going to be working. And I think that's one way of looking at it. And it's very much of a short-term, hey, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe there's a lot of contract labor there. We can make some changes. But if you think of the core of your business, and if you can start driving that kind of 10X mentality in your teams and your capabilities, that really opens up a ton of white space and gets more into the, how do I add new customer experiences? How do I drive revenue? And a little less out of the cost savings game. And we know kind of over time, if you're going after revenue generation and new customers, that's where real growth is going to be coming from, not just from the cost savings play.
That's interesting. I mean, are there any bits of businesses which you think are particularly under threat from AI? I'll give you an example. I was presented to a bunch of marketeers, and look at marketing and the discipline of marketing and what's happened from automation around media and increasingly creativity. And so it doesn't take a genius to kind of look at it and go, well, the way that marketing functions and the way it works with things like this agency is that's going to transform dramatically. Marketing to me is an area where that will change fundamentally because of AI. So I just wondered if there's other bits of the business, whether you agree with that. That may be a sort of slightly dystopian view, but
well, I think marketing is a great place to start because it hits on the content generation. It talks about the multimodal capability of AI. And it also hits on the really important conversation of trust too. I think we see recent lawsuits that are coming out around sort of copyright infringement around some of the image gen capabilities. So this is a very real problem to advance this for marketing because you have this idea of creativity. And how do you sort of draw the line between what was human creation versus AI creation? And where did that sort of melding of prior inputs from experiences becomes something new that you created or not. So I think this is a great example of like that 10x your marketing function capability. So what are the things you can create really fast in your marketing team? Well, I mean, we're on a podcast, right? We can create podcasts now, having AI generated podcasts being created by Notebook LM once from a piece of research paper. So the discipline is kind of interesting, but like people will tune in to us talking, hopefully, versus the AI is talking, because there's a bit of human engagement here that's a little different than what they're creating. So the challenge for marketing in some of these cases is now thinking like, how do I create that human feel? And I use AI to 10x the things around it that might have been slowing it down, which could have been like reviews of copy, creating 70 different versions of a potential image to get down to the 3 you want to pick. Like thinking through the content funnel, thinking about how you quickly get it to multiple language support in every country and geography. That used to take a while. Now I can get it into many languages, in minutes. So I think that level of thing, like that's where you kind of 10x the function and you put like our human creativity, like at the forefront of like what you can do in marketing. So I think every function is going to experience this level of impact. I think it's getting disproportionate in certain ones at the start, like a marketing, like a contact center, like software development, because some of those things were just naturally geared towards generative AI type content creation.
Totally. I think it's fascinating, that whole kind of journey and what you're saying in terms of 10xing. So Dharm, is there anything else that you're kind of keen to ask? I mean, I think we were kind of keen to talk about the banking side of things. So, I mean, you talked about sort of loosely agents who, personal customers can be talking to. I mean, I get from a kind of banking point of view that they really need to be kind of thinking about their internal processes to begin with. But at some point, these agents have to kind of go live, don't they? So
I think customer engagement is a huge aspect of this as well. I think getting advice on situations, I think proactive outreach on different types of activities that a human might be doing. An intervention is another big play that you can make from an AI perspective here too. We're seeing a lot in back office, fraud, AML, those types of activities kind of in terms of using AI to protect against those risks and also using it to proactively defend the organization from a cyber perspective. So, cyber plus AI for the good guys protecting from the bad guys, I think is a really big kind of important capability the enterprises are looking in that space too. And then I think it'd be really interesting to kind of look at when we've seen some startups and different things in the space, why it's important to watch them is what are the AI first versions of an insurance company? What is an AI first version of a banking entity and how does that look? Because those start to challenge our beliefs about how we engage with a bank or how we engage with the technology that is everything. I do truly believe that a lot of this is all really up for disruption at the moment. And we're going to get a lot of choppiness as we start to experience business model changes pretty rapidly over the next few years.
Is that likely to come from the banks themselves or the insurance companies themselves? So like Dharm and I were there for the first round of digital transformation, which was the launch of a bunch of brands from the traditional banks. Are we going to go through the same life cycle with them as they go, oh, we're going to launch our AI brand?
Yeah. And our e-commerce platform and our trading platform. And now we've got them. I think the risk with AI right now is the speed challenge. Like we thought web and digital kind of moved pretty quickly. I think the speed to get viable product is so fast. And so your ability to go kind of, we talk about a little bit, sort of we're moving from sort of an app economy to maybe an agent economy and kind of like maybe that's sort of the way things start to move. And so if you're a bank and you're not thinking through what are my agents that I'm building for my customer facing engagement, and then how will those agents talk to other banks behind the scenes without talking to a human, like you're probably behind on the conversation. And so that kind of moving those things really far forward, I think is really important. And that'll keep your organization agile. And then you got to watch the smaller players because you can do so much with a few resources now. A few humans and a lot of AI technology can really move the ball fast.
It's really, really interesting. I mean, the other thing that I guess we've been pondering is the regulator as well. So I was saying to Dharmesh the other day that, you can imagine a world in the future in which you've kind of got a business with an agent, a customer with an agent, and a regulator with an agent. So how do they all face off to each other? I don't know. Is that something you thought about? Or?
Well, and the idea of like the three of us sending our agents to a meeting with each other, it's kind of like, why did we have the meeting if the agents were going to go talk to each other? So there's some funny scenarios out there. I think the regulation piece is fascinating. And it's really sort of this tension between regulation and innovation. And how do we find the right balance? Because there's value in regulation to provide trust in a system. And so we've got to figure out like what the balance is in maintaining trust in a system while still allowing the innovation to happen. And so in the US, we're experiencing this where we've seen the repeal of our like an AI Act under the first administration. Now we got the Trump administration sort of taking feedback on what they're going to get in terms of what they think the regulation should be. All while the US organizations have businesses in Europe and the rest of the world and have to think about the EU AI Act, which is sort of a governing view that most people have like, okay, that's a good standard to look at. And then we have state level regulation too, which other countries are dealing with as well. And that regulatory environment is creating a lot of confusion of where do I step first? And if I take a step there, what are the risks associated with it? So one of the things that we're advising our clients to do is say, what are your core principles? Like, what do you view as sacrosanct around like the ethics, the way you engage with customers, the way you want to protect data, how you want to think about it? So start there and then think about the geographies that you play in and then determine what you're comfortable with based off the geographies you're playing with. And that I think sort of gives you a working framework. And then in the day-to-day, the other thing we bump into is that you should always have as part of your AI COE team, some form of legal regulatory risk that's part of your group. Because if you sort of plan to do your AI work and then knock on the risk officer's door at the end of the day and say, hey, we're done. What do you think? You're in for a slower deployment than bringing the chief risk officer, that function along with you on the journey. And in some cases too, it's been great. We've seen that function actually say, great, well, how can you help automate some of the things we're going through? And then we can be faster. And like, that's sort of where that sort of flywheel gets going. And there's a lot of value created.
I think one of the things it's making me realize, and you kind of, again, you alluded to it there, is every business has to really go back to its core fundamentals and say, what am I good at? What's my brand? Who are my customers? What is it we want to achieve? Because there is going to be no hiding place for inefficiency or all this other stuff, which I think corporates tend to have got them, or enterprises have got themselves into, where they hide behind their sort of mistakes are hidden because of other mistakes. All of that stuff's going to be stripped away. And I sort of feel actually there's an opportunity for a kind of rebirth around really thinking about enterprises and what enterprises stand for, because there's going to be no place to hide.
We kind of went through that phase, didn't we? With the internet, we went through that phase where well beyond 2000 and the dot-com bubble, probably about 2015 or so, we started to think much more about what about this generation, the millennials that have grown up with the internet. So they've been using it all the time. And I think some of the forward-looking organizations are saying exactly the same thing about AI, which is what is Gen Z, which will have grown up using AI? What will their expectations and behaviors be? And how should we be planning for that? So I think we've kind of seen partly what the impact could be, or the way to look at how the impact could be from the past before.
I think that's a great point. And that's sort of part of that kind of consumer-led experience, that if you're getting the best tools as a consumer, your work experience has to match, or you're going to start getting a lot of tension in that system. And we see it too. We see it because we want to make sure our employees have the right tools, but we also have to protect our client data. And that's our values. Like, we don't want to let that out. So we have to find the right balance. And I think what's a little bit different, like we look at tech transformation over multiple different times, we've seen these inflections. And you hit at the beginning, like this moment, rapid adoption of these applications is just so much faster than everything else, that's the piece we can't discount, is the speed equation of it'll be okay to wait. I mean, we're late to the market, but we'll catch up. There's a lot of catching up to do on that curve if you're just starting. And that's the sense of urgency that I think is right to have in the market. It's not fear. It's just, you got to be urgent about this now.
No, fantastic. Been really interesting to kind of get your perspective. And I think particularly as you're kind of looking across a very broad spectrum of businesses and how they're kind of starting to deal with this. So thank you so much for your kind of honest view on that as well. And you mentioned a couple of newsletters. What's your favorite one?
One of the ones that I sort of subscribed to early on was the AI Rundown. I think it's Rowan Chung is the person that sort of runs it. I enjoy that one. Tech Brew and a couple of those from the Daily Brew crew have some great stuff. And then one of the things that was great within our firm, one of our leaders, he started sending out a weekly update of all the things that's going on in AI. And I can't remember what version he's on, but 100 plus iterations of this newsletter. Our CEO on down reads it. And it's a great internal document of the best stuff that's going on. And so that's a lot of it that they're using, and then use a bunch of AI tools to kind of help pull it too. And that's a great example of people creating businesses. They're able to do a 10x kind of experience on their newsletter because they've got the AI tools, they can build the capabilities, they can launch the stuff around it, and it's neat. And they create it in a year or two. So those are some things I follow. Love to follow your podcast, see what's going on, which is talking about from a fintech perspective as well, I think is great. There's a lot of great, and that's what's so cool about the podcasting space too, is there's so much great information and dialogue. And that's the key part, is like keep having the conversations and don't assume that you have the answers on all this stuff.
I mean, just picking up on the podcast stuff and 10xing, like we're using a platform, and the ability that platform has to take one podcast and turn it into an enormous amount of content is just unbelievable, to be honest with you. So these are all things that weren't available even 12 months ago. So anyway, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure talking to you guys too. Really enjoyed it. Great conversation. We'll keep following along.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Dave and Dharm Demystify. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and tune in next time as we take another topic and demystify it.